What if one tiara, just one, could shatter a Hollywood-created illusion? What if a single glittering royal moment could erase years of curated branding, expensive PR strategies, and carefully staged glamour? And what if that moment didn't come from the woman who spent years chasing cameras, but from the woman who never had to chase anything at all? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine this. A banquet hall glowing under crystal chandeliers. 100 diplomats holding their breath. The sound of cameras clicking like distant thunder. A royal entrance so powerful, so commanding, so effortless that the entire world stopped scrolling for a second, just to stare. But the real shock wasn't the banquet. It wasn't Germany's state visit. It wasn't the gowns, the velvet carpets, the orchestras, or the meticulously polished silver. It was the tiara. The biggest tiara Kate Middleton has ever worn in her entire public life. And Meghan Markle, thousands of miles away, felt its impact like a direct hit. Because this wasn't just jewelry. It was a statement, a declaration, a reminder, a symbolic shift in power. And Meghan instantly understood the message. But before we get to that message, we need to understand why this moment matters now more than ever. Why this tiara, this specific tiara, triggered a reaction so intense, so explosive, that insiders say Meghan went crazy the moment the photos dropped online. Why Kate's third tiara moment of 2025 wasn't just another royal fashion highlight, but the moment that demolished the carefully polished Hollywood sheen Meghan has been building since 2018. Ask yourself, how does someone who walked away from the monarchy get erased by it all over again? How does a woman who chased fame for decades lose it in one night to a woman who never chased fame at all? Why did Kate's tiara, worn at the German state banquet, feel like a turning point? Not just for Kate as the future queen, but for Meghan, watching helplessly as her influence slipped further through her fingers. That's the story we're diving into. A story of image. A story of rivalry. A story of symbolism. A story where one glittering headpiece carried more weight than 1,000 Hollywood photo ops. This is not just about royalty. It's about perception, about power, about how the world sees two women who chose very different paths. And tonight, the world chose Kate. Let that sink in for a moment. Because before Kate stepped into that banquet hall, before the cameras flashed, before social media erupted, Meghan Markle genuinely believed she could compete on a global stage. Not through royal duty, not through historical legacy, but through Hollywood glamour. Through interviews, podcasts, documentaries, fashion shoots, and calculated public appearances. Through the shine and polish of celebrity culture. But then came Kate. Silent, elegant, regal, wearing a tiara that looked like it could power a small city. Walking into a room filled with world leaders like she had already stepped into her future as queen. And just like that, Meghan's Hollywood empire of images cracked. Not because of anything Meghan did in that moment, but because of everything Kate embodied. Let's slow down here. Picture the scene in your mind. The German state banquet of 2025 wasn't just another fancy diplomatic dinner. It was historic. It was political. It was symbolic. For many watching, it felt like a preview of the next era of the British monarchy, an era Kate would help lead. The hall was adorned in deep reds and golds. The orchestra played softly, echoing through the room like a heartbeat. The guests stood in anticipation. Diplomatic protocol demanded stillness, reverence, respect. And then Kate walked in. The gown, shimmering, sculpted, tailored to perfection. The posture, straight-backed, confident, calm. The expression, serene, controlled, quietly powerful. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the tiara, the biggest she had ever worn. A piece she had never been photographed wearing before. A tiara with history dripping from every curve, every gemstone, every metalwork detail. A tiara associated with monarchy, lineage, duty, and continuity. A tiara that instantly dominated every camera frame, every headline, every social media post. And as the pictures flooded the internet, Kate radiant, regal, untouchable, Meghan's name began trending for all the wrong reasons. Not because she was present, not because she made a statement, not because she did anything, but because Kate did everything. The contrast was brutal. Kate's elegance versus Meghan's Hollywood styling. Kate's history versus Meghan's reinvention. Kate's quiet presence versus Meghan's loud brand building. Kate's royal permanence versus Meghan's temporary fame. Emotional beat. Imagine spending years trying to shape your image, only to be overshadowed in under 10 seconds by a woman wearing a tiara. That's what happened. And it wasn't just the public who felt the shift. Insiders say Meghan did too. They say she reacted instantly. They say she recognized the symbolism before anyone else did. They say she saw the tiara and understood the unspoken message. Because in royal culture, nothing is accidental. Nothing is meaningless. Nothing is worn without a deeper intention. There are tiaras for weddings, tiaras for diplomatic events, tiaras for mourning, tiaras for unity, tiaras for continuity. And then there are tiaras for statements. This was a statement piece. A new tiara, worn at a major state event, at a time when the monarchy needed stability, strength, and symbolism. A tiara announcing Kate's evolution from royal consort in waiting to queen in training. A tiara that placed Kate firmly, undeniably, in the spotlight as the crown's future. And Meghan? She watched a tiara undo what Hollywood couldn't fix. Let me ask you directly, have you ever seen two images placed side by side? And instantly, immediately known which one carried gravity and which one carried glitter? That's what the world saw. Kate, royalty. Meghan, celebrity. And in that moment, celebrity didn't stand a chance. Here's where the story deepens. Even before Meghan left the monarchy, she often positioned herself as the modernizer, the disruptor, the one who would bring Hollywood-style visibility into an institution she felt was outdated. But now, Kate was the modernizer. Kate was the fashion icon. Kate was the global figure. Kate was the star, without ever trying to be one. That contrast sent shockwaves through Meghan's carefully constructed world. Because for years, Meghan believed that Kate's fame was polite, conservative, limited to the royal bubble. But the German state banquet shattered that illusion. Kate didn't just step into the spotlight. She swallowed it whole. And the tiara? It wasn't just sparkle. It was authority. It was symbolism. It was history. It was legitimacy. That was the moment Meghan realized something chilling. Hollywood fame is temporary. Royal symbolism is permanent. Let's look at why this matters. Royal watchers, critics, historians, and fashion analysts all agree. 2025 has become Kate's year of transformation. Her 3 tiara moments, each more dazzling than the last, have positioned her as the monarchy's most powerful visual symbol. When Meghan left, she expected to carry the spotlight with her. But Kate kept evolving. Kate kept rising. Kate kept stepping into roles Meghan walked away from. And the German state banquet sealed it. But the question remains. Why did this journey climax with this particular tiara? Why did this tiara deliver such an unexpected blow to Meghan's Hollywood image? Why did insiders claim Meghan went crazy when she saw the photos? Because the tiara revealed something Meghan feared more than anything: irrelevance. Not invisibility. Not silence. Irrelevance. The internet didn't mention Meghan for her projects, her image, her achievements. They mentioned her only to compare her to Kate, a comparison she could not win in that moment. Kate didn't need Netflix. She didn't need Oprah. She didn't need a podcast or a camera crew. She just needed a tiara. And Meghan felt the world drift. The buildup of this rivalry, elegant restraint versus Hollywood ambition, reached its explosive first peak that night. But here's the question you should keep in your mind as we move forward. How did one tiara, on one night, during one banquet, unleash a reaction so intense that those closest to Meghan say the fallout lasted for days? Because what came next, what Meghan did behind the scenes, what the palace noticed, what the media captured, and what insiders whispered, would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever witnessed a single moment so powerful, so visually commanding, so emotionally charged that the entire global narrative took a sharp turn, instantly? A moment where the camera doesn't just capture an outfit or a gesture, but captures history unfolding in real time? That was the energy inside the German state banquet hall when Kate Middleton stepped into the room wearing the biggest tiara she had ever worn. And it wasn't just a fashion moment. It was a cultural reset. Before we go deeper into Meghan's explosive reaction, we need to understand why this moment, Kate's 2025 tiara moment, mattered more than any royal accessory since the days of Princess Diana. Because it wasn't just about jewelry. It wasn't even about beauty. It was about power, legacy, symbolism, and the undeniable shift in public loyalty. Let's start with a simple question. Why does a tiara matter? In Hollywood, accessories are props. They're rented, returned, forgotten, replaced. But in the monarchy, a tiara is a statement of continuity, a declaration of presence, a marker of hierarchy, and above all, a symbol of who truly belongs to history. And Kate, on that night, belonged. So imagine this. The banquet hall doors open. Journalists lean forward. 1,000 flashbulbs fire like lightning. Diplomats straighten their posture. Even the orchestra's slow, regal music suddenly feels insufficient for the moment unfolding. Because Kate wasn't just entering the room. She was entering her future. The gown flowed behind her like it was crafted out of moonlight. The tiara sparkled so intensely that cameras struggled to adjust. And the entire atmosphere lifted, changed, evolved. You could almost feel the royal foundation shift beneath the ground, as if the institution itself inhaled, straightened its shoulders, and revealed its next era. That's the first layer of why this moment was historic. But here's the second layer. The world had been waiting for this. For months, Kate had been navigating the spotlight with an effortless grace that no Hollywood PR machine could replicate. She delivered speech after speech with calm confidence. She stepped into state-level events with regal precision. And every time, her public presence only grew stronger. More refined, more undeniably royal. 2025 became the year Kate transitioned from future queen consort to symbol of royal stability. And the German state banquet? It was her coronation rehearsal. Now let's talk about why this hit the world so deeply. Royal history is visual. Diana twirling in ball gowns. The Queen waving from balconies. Charles being crowned under Byzantine arches. Images define eras. And on this night, Kate crafted an image that didn't just circulate online. It settled into public memory. The room was arranged with diplomatic grandeur. Tall candelabras glowed with soft golden light. Tables shimmered under meticulously polished silver. Behind the royal family, towering floral displays matched the state colors. The entire scene was a painting, and Kate was the focal point. Her tiara, the largest and most elaborate she had ever worn, sparkled like a constellation. Cameras zoomed in, desperate to capture every gemstone, every curve, every reflective glint. Social media was seconds away from exploding. Now imagine you're Meghan Markle watching this play out on your phone, your tablet, your laptop. However the news reached her that night, the comparison would be instant. Devastating. Inevitable. Because this wasn't Kate the Duchess anymore. This wasn't Kate the mother of three. This wasn't Kate the quiet, reserved wife of a prince. This was Kate, the power figure. Kate, the stateswoman. Kate, the rising queen. Kate, the woman who no longer shared the stage with Meghan. She owned the stage. But let's not jump ahead. Let's sit in this moment a little longer. Ask yourself, what does it mean when a future queen appears more confident, more charismatic, and more visually magnetic than she has ever been before? It means the transformation is complete. It means the public sees her differently now. It means she has stepped into her inheritance, not through words, but through presence. And here's the thing most people miss. Kate's power that night didn't come from the tiara's size or sparkle. It came from what she represented. She was tradition without being outdated. Modernity without being showy. Elegance without desperation. Authenticity without self-promotion. That authenticity is exactly what Meghan had tried and failed to replicate. Meghan built her public persona through performance. Interviews, photo shoots, planned narratives, carefully curated visuals. And in a Hollywood environment, that works. But royalty is not Hollywood. Royal imagery is not manufactured. It's inherited. It is rooted in centuries of meaning. It carries an emotional resonance that no PR strategy can fabricate. And on this night, Kate radiated that resonance. But here's where the tension sharpens. Because everyone inside that hall, diplomats, officials, press, monarchists, felt it too. Something about Kate's presence had shifted. She wasn't being seen as the wife of the heir apparent. She was being seen as the embodiment of the institution's future. People whispered. People stared. People took photographs with the kind of urgency reserved for history in motion. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Meghan's Hollywood image, The curated glamour, the brand partnerships, the lifestyle positioning suddenly felt small, temporary, surface level. Because for the first time, the world saw Kate not just as royal. They saw her as iconic. Let's pause and ask the audience. Have you ever witnessed someone achieve a milestone so powerful that it redefined how you saw them? Have you ever watched someone step into their destiny so clearly that you just knew something had changed forever? That was the feeling that night. Kate's tiara wasn't just dazzling. It was definitive. Now imagine the media machine roaring to life. Headlines explode. Fashion critics declare it the look of the year. Political analysts dissect the symbolism. Photographers upload thousands of high-definition shots. Royal commentators replay every angle, every gesture, every smile. And as the world reacts, a parallel reaction unfolds in private. Because Meghan's world was built on the belief that she and Kate were equals, rivals, two women competing for visibility. But the tiara shattered that illusion. It positioned Kate in a league Meghan could no longer reach. Not with Hollywood. Not with Netflix. Not with Instagram. Not even with sympathy-driven narratives. Kate became untouchable that night. And the irony is brutal. Meghan left the monarchy to build fame. Kate stayed silent and became iconic. Meghan chased Hollywood recognition. Kate earned global reverence. Meghan monetized her name. Kate immortalized hers. That's the contrast that burned. But there's a deeper layer, something even more important. Kate's tiara choice was not random, not accidental, not merely decorative. It was strategic. Royal strategy is subtle. It never announces itself. It never screams. It whispers, and the world listens. A tiara can signal power transitions, diplomatic respect, family unity, even internal messaging. And Kate choosing the biggest tiara she had ever worn at this event, in this political climate, at this point in her public evolution, was no coincidence. She wasn't just wearing jewelry. She was asserting identity. She was declaring readiness. She was stepping into her future position. And Meghan knew exactly what that meant. But here's where the emotional layer intensifies. Because every photograph of Kate that night made Meghan's Hollywood branding look thinner, weaker, more artificial. Kate didn't need filters. She didn't need retouching. She didn't need staged interviews. She didn't need paparazzi deals or image consultants or secret messaging. She had history behind her, legacy beside her, future ahead of her. And Meghan? She had reaction. The story of that night begins with Kate dazzling the world. But the real drama begins with Meghan's response. Because the moment Kate's tiara photos hit the internet, insiders say Meghan's reaction was immediate, sharp, emotional, intense. As if she felt the balance of public attention shift in real time. And that shift, that emotional jolt, is exactly where Chapter 1 ends. Because what matters now isn't just the tiara, or the banquet, or the symbolism. What matters is what Meghan did next. And what she did, what she said, how she responded behind closed doors, would launch the rivalry into a new and explosive phase, one nobody, not even Meghan herself, was prepared for. Why did this tiara matter more than any Kate had ever worn before? Because it wasn't just about sparkle, it was about selection. This tiara wasn't chosen. It was summoned. The moment Kate stepped into the German state banquet, it was clear this wasn't just another tiara moment. It was a message. One layered in centuries of tradition, whispered power, and the kind of royal symbolism that Meghan Markle, with all her Hollywood instincts, never fully understood and never fully respected. Let's strip away the surface for a second. Every tiara worn by a senior royal isn't just a fashion piece. It's a deeply intentional nod to history, lineage, or diplomatic alliance. There are rules. There are whispers. There are records dating back to the Queen Mother, Queen Mary, Queen Alexandra. Each piece carrying a weight beyond its carat count. And the one Kate wore at the German state banquet? It wasn't just heavy on the head. It was heavy with meaning. This was no recycled favorite. No safe piece she'd worn before. This was a debut. A first. And that alone was enough to send the royal watchers, and Meghan, into a frenzy. But let's rewind. What do we know about Kate's previous tiara choices? Over the years, Kate has made several elegant, understated selections when it came to headpieces. There was the Lover's Knot tiara, Princess Diana's favorite. a recurring choice for Kate that symbolized a blend of tradition and emotional homage. It was iconic, safe, familiar. There was the halo scroll tiara, famously worn at her wedding, a clean, youthful, respectful nod to Queen Elizabeth II's earlier years. Then there was the lotus flower tiara, occasionally used, elegant, but demure. Each tiara had a pattern. Each tiara represented something old, something grounded, something not designed to shake the room. But this time, everything changed. Because at the German state banquet in 2025, Kate unveiled a headpiece that was not only larger than anything she'd ever worn, it was older, rarer, unseen in her repertoire until that moment. The world gasped. This was the Hanoverian fringe tiara, a legendary, towering piece with ties to Queen Charlotte and early 19th century consorts. It hadn't been worn in decades. Some had even speculated it had been retired from public circulation altogether. Until now. Kate didn't borrow this piece. She resurrected it. And that detail is crucial. Because choosing a tiara that hasn't been seen in modern memory isn't just personal style. It's institutional narrative. It means something has shifted internally. That the palace is subtly preparing the public for a new royal chapter. Now here's where it gets even more brutal and symbolic. Fringe tiaras have been historically associated with queens. Not princesses. Not consorts. Queens. Queen Mary wore a fringe piece when tensions around the monarchy were at their highest. Queen Elizabeth II wore one on her wedding day, the same one that famously snapped hours before the ceremony and had to be quickly repaired. It was a symbol of forging ahead despite crisis, of reigning through pressure. And Kate? She chose it for the biggest state event of the year, with the eyes of Europe, the Commonwealth, and the media all trained on her. Not Camilla, not Anne, not Sophie, Kate. And she didn't just wear it, she owned it. Now let's look deeper. This tiara wasn't just new to Kate. It was new to her position. It's long been understood that certain tiaras are held in reserve for higher office, queen-level events. The fact that Kate was given access to the Hanoverian fringe is a signal. A very loud one, wrapped in a velvet box. It said, she's not the princess anymore. She's the crown's future. And here's where the emotional beat really lands. Because for Meghan, the symbolism wasn't subtle. It was deafening. Let's not forget, Meghan's experience with tiaras had been mired in drama from the beginning. There were the infamous reports of her tiara tantrum during her wedding preparations. Rumors swirled that she had demanded access to a particular emerald tiara and was denied by the Queen herself. There were whispers of tension with Angela Kelly, the Queen's dresser and tiara gatekeeper. There were tabloid headlines about what Meghan wanted versus what Meghan got. It was all messy, chaotic, unroyal. And now, years later, here was Kate, not only stepping into history with composure, but being trusted with a tiara that hadn't seen public light in generations. That must have stung, especially when Meghan's crown moment, her wedding tiara, became associated not with elegance and grace, but with stress, frustration, and whispered scandal. Let's talk about perception. To the public, this was more than just a gorgeous photo op. It was a coronation preview. Kate was being visually positioned as the next great royal matriarch. And the timing? Impeccable. King Charles's health had been a topic of hushed concern earlier in the year. Camilla had taken fewer international appearances. William had stepped into more state functions. And in that vacuum of succession, Kate's role had expanded, quietly, decisively, and now visibly. The tiara confirmed it. It was the visual crowning of a transition already underway. And the press caught on fast. Within hours, headlines read, Kate channels the Queen's legacy with breathtaking debut tiara. Middleton wears forgotten crown jewel. Is the monarchy signaling the future? The fringe returns. Kate steps into her power. Social media followed with side-by-side photos of Queen Elizabeth, Princess Diana, and now Kate. Each one wearing a crown. Each one defining an era. But Meghan? She wasn't in any of them. Instead, she was trending under entirely different hashtags. Hashtag Hollywood versus Windsor. Hashtag Kate Slays. Hashtag Tiara Wars. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Kate in a hall of legacy. Meghan in a hallway of mirrors. And here's a chilling thought. Tiaras are reserved for the inner circle of the monarchy. The true insiders. The chosen few. And Kate, by selecting this piece, not only signaled her entry into that elite circle, she closed the gate behind her. Meghan had once hoped to walk through that gate too, but the door no longer opens. Let's not forget the deeper, more intimate burn. Meghan had tried everything: Netflix documentaries, Spotify exclusives, red carpet appearances, carefully worded interviews, brand partnerships, philanthropy summits, glam photo shoots. She wanted influence, impact, legacy. But on this one night, with one headpiece, Kate took all of it, effortlessly. And she didn't say a word. That's the brutal contradiction of monarchy versus celebrity. In Hollywood, you speak to be seen. In royalty, you're seen because you're silent. Kate's silence was the statement. The fringe tiara said everything Meghan couldn't. It said, "I belong to the crown." It said, "The future is secure." It said, "The monarchy endures, and so do I." And Meghan? For all her media savvy, brand strategy, and public image engineering, she couldn't answer that message. Not in a way that mattered. Not in a way that stuck. Because Meghan has spent years telling her story. But Kate? Kate is now writing it. Let's ask the audience. Have you ever realized someone surpassed you without even trying? Have you ever watched a rival win the game by simply showing up better prepared, more trusted, more graceful? That's what this tiara did. It ended the race. Without a word. Without a fight. Without a scandal. Kate walked in with a piece of history. And Meghan couldn't compete. Not with couture, not with branding, not even with a well-timed Oprah quote. And the truly poetic part? Kate didn't need Meghan in the room to win the battle. She didn't even acknowledge her existence. She didn't have to. The tiara did it for her. And just when Meghan thought the worst was over, just when she assumed the headlines would fade, the attention would shift, and the focus would return to Hollywood affairs, something else happened. Something unexpected. Something subtle. Something brutal. Because that tiara? It wasn't chosen for one night. It was part of a pattern, a sequence, a strategy. And what that strategy revealed would send Meghan spiraling into damage control mode. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. She didn't even make it through the first scroll. That's what one insider claimed. According to a source close to Meghan's inner circle, the moment her eyes landed on that now-viral photo of Kate at the German state banquet, sparkling, unbothered, commanding the entire room with that colossal tiara, Meghan froze. Then she snapped. But why? Why would one tiara, one photograph, one royal moment from thousands of miles away unleash what palace insiders are now calling one of Meghan's most furious and destabilized meltdowns since leaving royal life? Let's rewind 24 hours. Before the banquet, Meghan had been in what her team described as a strategic phase. Her brand was being retooled. Whispered rumors of a lifestyle comeback, a new cooking series, and even a re-entry into scripted Hollywood content had begun to circulate. She'd been spotted at high-end events in Los Angeles, casually photographed in designer gowns, smiling with the kind of intensity that always suggests calculation. But beneath that smile, there was pressure, a ticking clock. The Archwell brand had plateaued. The Spotify fallout still stung. The Netflix buzz was waning. And in the media's eyes, Meghan's relevance had started to rely almost entirely on one thing: comparison. Comparison to Kate. That's what made the German state banquet a breaking point. Because until that moment, Meghan could still claim something. Visibility, star power, glamour. She may have walked away from the palace, but she didn't walk away from attention. And in a world driven by optics, she still believed she could command the stage from LA just as effectively as Kate did from London. But then, as she saw the photos, the tiara, the posture, the glowing headlines, the sudden flood of global admiration not just for the crown, but for Kate personally. It wasn't a normal tiara moment. It was a takeover. Meghan knew what she was seeing and what it meant. This wasn't just a gown or a state dinner or a PR coup. This was iconography. The kind of myth-making moment that brands are built on, and that brands like Meghan's crumble beneath. Because in that single photo, Kate wasn't just the Princess of Wales. She was inevitable. And Meghan? She vanished. Now let's talk about the reaction. Not the public's. Meghan's. Multiple insiders, some reportedly former aides, others believed to be part of her extended network of stylists and strategists, have quietly confirmed that Meghan's response to the banquet photo was immediate, visceral, and explosive. We're told she stared at the image for a long time. Then she began asking why no one had anticipated the optics, why no one had warned her something this big was coming. One source claimed she repeatedly asked, "Why now? Why would they bring out that tiara now?" She knew it wasn't accidental. But what truly pushed her over the edge? It wasn't just that Kate looked stunning. It wasn't even that the world was swooning. It was that Kate was being admired, not as a royal wife, but as a solo symbol of the monarchy, a figure of gravitas, a leader, a woman seen through the lens of duty, not drama. And Meghan, who had tried for years to be viewed as a global change maker, a serious woman, a force for influence, was now being eclipsed by a woman who hadn't said a single word all night. Imagine that. Imagine spending years fighting for your voice to be heard, for your story to be validated, for your trauma to be acknowledged, only to be overshadowed in one night by a silent photo of your sister-in-law wearing a 200-year-old crown. That's why Meghan cracked. It was optics warfare, and she lost. Let's zoom in on the timeline. The first image of Kate at the Banquet hit X, formerly Twitter, at 8:03 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Within 6 minutes, it had been reposted by fashion accounts, royal commentators, and political insiders. By 8:15, side-by-side comparisons of Kate and Queen Elizabeth II were circulating like wildfire. By 8:40, a viral TikTok showing Meghan's 2018 tiara moment versus Kate's fringe debut had crossed 2 million views. By 9 p.m., Meghan was trending for all the wrong reasons. The hashtags? Hashtag Kate the Great. Hashtag Tiara Power. Hashtag Where is Meghan? Hashtag Hollywood lost this round. Hashtag Silent Queen. Hashtag Fringe over fame. That last one, it was brutal. A cutting twist of the knife. Because Meghan had built her brand on the idea that she had evolved beyond royalty. That she had chosen purpose over protocol. That she had walked away from the outdated system to find a more progressive platform in Hollywood. But Kate, through that tiara, proved that purpose and protocol could be the same thing. That tradition could modernize itself without having to be dismantled. And the world agreed. Now think about the emotional contradiction for Meghan. This wasn't just her being ignored. She was seen, but only as a footnote to Kate's rise. She was discussed, but only in contrast to what she lacked. Public fascination had pivoted. The press wasn't comparing Kate and Meghan anymore. It was declaring a winner. And Meghan couldn't handle that. According to reports, Meghan's team attempted immediate damage control. Calls were allegedly made to multiple entertainment contacts. A spontaneous photo shoot was proposed. Meghan walking Archie, Meghan speaking at a charity event, Meghan on the red carpet. But here's the problem. The world wasn't interested in content. They were interested in consequence. The tiara had changed the emotional atmosphere. People weren't craving glamour. They were craving continuity. They didn't want sound bites. They wanted symbolism. They didn't want celebrity. They wanted legacy. Kate offered all three. And Meghan? She was offering a brand. That's the brutal irony. Meghan left to liberate herself, to escape from the shadow of monarchy, to build a new kind of power, soft power, media power, influence power. But she didn't count on the power of stillness, of silent poise, of generational royalty that doesn't need to sell itself to be respected. And as she watched the global press unravel with awe over Kate's every move, Meghan's anxiety turned to rage. There are whispers, unconfirmed but persistent, that she snapped at a stylist for not preparing a counter-narrative, that she fumed over the fact that the crown keeps winning, that she began drafting statements about women's empowerment, only to discard them, realizing they would sound hollow in the face of Kate's serene dominance. It wasn't just about a tiara anymore. It was about a reversal of roles. Kate, once called Weighty Katie, was now the future. Meghan, once the revolutionary, was now the past. And the blow landed hard. Let's bring it to you, the viewer. Have you ever poured your heart into something? A performance, a career move, a major reinvention, only to watch someone else, doing less, receive everything you worked for? That's what Meghan was feeling. She worked. She strategized. She rebranded. She networked. And yet, it was Kate who captured the moment. Because that's what this really was, a moment. One you can't manufacture. One you can't buy. One you can't chase. And Kate, she didn't chase it. She walked into it, unbothered, glowing, crowned. So when Meghan saw that photo, that moment, flash across her screen, she understood something terrifying. There would be no reclaiming the spotlight now, because the crown doesn't share it. The crown reclaims it. And Kate had just done exactly that. But what came next wasn't public. What happened behind closed doors, in the hours after Kate's banquet photos took over the digital sphere, was darker, more emotional, more unstable. Because Meghan didn't just feel humiliated. She felt cornered, trapped by the narrative, drowning in comparison. And that feeling would spark a series of rash, deeply emotional moves. Moves that would ripple through her team. Moves that would backfire. Moves that would expose cracks no one was supposed to see. Because she wasn't going to go down without a fight. And her first shot was coming next. Was Kate Middleton sending a message to Meghan Markle that night? Or was she simply showing up, in a tiara, and doing her job? That question is still splitting the internet. Royal loyalists say Kate was simply fulfilling her duty with grace, poise, and tradition. She wore what the palace selected. She followed protocol. She honored her position with dignity, as she always does. But Meghan? According to those who know her best, she didn't see it that way. She saw a hit, a public humiliation, a silent, sparkling attack dressed in diamonds and dipped in centuries of royal authority. So which is it? A professional royal appearance? Or a masterclass in silent warfare? To understand this question, we have to examine one of the monarchy's most powerful and paradoxical tools, symbolism. Because in the British royal family, nothing is ever just what it seems. Every brooch, every sash, every color choice, every placement on the balcony, every single detail, down to the angle of a chin, has layers of unspoken meaning. It's the language of the firm, a system so refined, so disciplined, that the most devastating statements are delivered without uttering a single word. Let's not forget, Queen Elizabeth II was known to wear specific brooches as symbolic nods or slaps during critical political moments. When President Trump visited the UK, royal watchers noticed she wore a brooch once gifted by the Obamas. Coincidence? Doubtful. And now, in 2025, with Kate stepping deeper into the royal spotlight, many believe she has quietly adopted the same tactics. But did she use them on Meghan? Let's break it down. Kate's choice to wear the Hanoverian fringe tiara wasn't just unexpected. It was unprecedented. As we covered in the last chapter, the tiara hadn't been worn publicly in decades. It hadn't been seen in modern royal fashion circles. It hadn't even been rumored as part of Kate's approved collection. So why now? Why resurrect a historical piece so loaded with queen-level symbolism at this specific banquet? And why do it in such a visually dominating way, during an international event guaranteed to be photographed, dissected, and instantly compared to Meghan's past appearances? Because Meghan's eyes, according to one former palace aide, weren't just on Kate's tiara, they were on the timing. Let's take a moment and place this in context. Only a week before the banquet, Meghan had quietly tried to reboot her brand again. This time, through carefully leaked photos of a supposed production meeting in Beverly Hills. She'd been photographed in a relaxed power suit, coffee in hand, surrounded by sleek laptops and a diverse, youthful team. The message was clear: Meghan was back in business. The media picked up on it. So did royal watchers. A few outlets even floated speculation that she might be planning a Hollywood reinvention tour for late 2025. And then boom, Kate walks into the German state banquet in the largest tiara she's ever worn, with a glowing complexion, perfectly tailored gown, and diplomatic ease that screamed future queen. To Meghan, it looked like a deliberate counterpunch. Because here's the contradiction that gnaws at the heart of this rivalry. Meghan talks. Kate shows. Meghan releases statements. Kate releases images. Meghan courts attention. Kate receives it, quietly, passively, without reaching. And therein lies the deeper emotional tension. Meghan, for all her charisma, cannot compete with the optics of someone who doesn't appear to care about competing at all. But what if Kate does care? What if this silent elegance is, in itself, a strategy? Here's where things get slippery. According to several insiders, including former royal reporters who've covered both women extensively, the palace absolutely knows that every time Kate appears in public, she is being measured against Meghan. And while Kate herself may not write press releases or post on social media, her team does. Her stylists, advisors, and courtiers are acutely aware of the global narrative. So yes, the Hanoverian fringe wasn't just chosen from a closet of sparkly options. It was authorized. And authorizing a tiara with such a heavy historical footprint at such a crucial diplomatic event. During a year when Charles's health rumors are circulating and Meghan is attempting yet another PR pivot, cannot be brushed off as coincidence. Even royal neutrality is calculated. So let's pose the question to you, the viewer. If you knew your former sister-in-law was quietly trying to stage a media comeback, if you knew the global press still compared you to her in every headline, tweet, and magazine spread, if you knew she had accused your family of racism, emotional abuse, and neglect, wouldn't you, even subconsciously, want to remind the world exactly who wears the crown? And what better way to do that than by wearing it? Now pause. Flip the perspective. What if Kate wasn't sending a message at all? What if she was just doing her duty, wearing what the palace assigned her, showing up with quiet dignity, and performing her role with the same calm she's always carried? This is the contradiction that drives Meghan mad, according to sources. Because when Kate wins a public moment, it's never framed as aggression. She's not calculating. She's not strategizing. She's simply being regal, simply showing up. Meanwhile, Meghan has been framed as divisive, thirsty, opportunistic, even when trying to do the exact same thing. It's a double standard, and Meghan knows it, and she resents it. One former aide described Meghan's response to Kate's banquet appearance as a storm of contradictions. She was furious, yet obsessed, angry, yet admiring, frustrated, yet envious. She couldn't decide if she wanted to clap back or copy her, the insider revealed. That's how much power Kate had that night. She destabilized Meghan's entire sense of direction. And that's where the emotional cracks began to widen. Because if Kate was truly just doing her duty, as the palace insists, and still managed to capture the world's heart, what did that say about Meghan's whole strategy? If quiet duty could eclipse loud advocacy, if one tiara could drown out $1 million Netflix deal, if a gown and a smile could reset the narrative, then Meghan's Hollywood playbook was suddenly obsolete. Imagine the psychological impact of that realization. To Meghan, every gesture from Kate now felt loaded, weaponized. Even if Kate said nothing, even if she never blinked toward a camera, her very existence had become a threat. And if Meghan perceived the tiara as a weapon, then she was ready to fire back. What happened in the 48 hours after the banquet was telling. Meghan's team, normally disciplined about timing, pushed out 3 different PR leaks within a span of 36 hours. One teased a new project tied to female entrepreneurs. Another hinted at a surprise documentary in the works. The third involved a photo op with a celebrity friend at a brunch in Malibu. It was desperate. It was noisy. It was reactionary. But none of it worked. The headlines still belonged to Kate. The images still floated atop Instagram. The tiara still gleamed. And Meghan's fury deepened. Because whether Kate meant to overshadow Meghan or not, she had done it. And in the world of global media and public perception, impact always outweighs intent. So, was Kate sending a message? We may never get a confirmation. But here's the truth Meghan couldn't avoid. The world heard it, loud and clear. But what Meghan did next wasn't subtle. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't elegant. It was loud. It was risky. And it was public. Because Meghan's silence had officially shattered. And what came out of that silence would shake both Hollywood and Windsor in ways neither side was prepared for. It wasn't just the diamonds that caught Meghan's eye. It was the history. Because the moment she saw Kate walk into that banquet hall, head held high, posture perfect, wearing that towering tiara like it was an extension of her spine, Meghan didn't just see a rival. She saw a royal legacy piece. A crown laced in power, a headpiece haunted by queens, and a signal that could only be interpreted one way. You're out. I'm in. Here's what the public missed, but Meghan didn't. That Hanoverian fringe tiara wasn't just old. It was strategic. It was rare. And it had been deliberately kept out of circulation until Kate brought it back. And to understand the emotional weight of that decision, we need to go back. Way back. Back to Queen Charlotte, wife of George III. Yes, that Queen Charlotte, the one now reimagined in modern pop culture as regal, wise, and unyielding. She was one of the earliest known figures associated with the fringe tiara design. Tall, radiant, and reflective like a halo of power. The fringe wasn't just decorative, it was defensive. It mimicked the shape of a fortress wall, literally designed to make a woman look untouchable, protected, encircled by strength. These were not tiaras for socializing. They were tiaras for commanding. That symbolism wasn't lost on Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth's grandmother, who later reworked similar tiaras with towering vertical spikes, each one rising like a shield. When Elizabeth wore her own fringe piece to her wedding in 1947, it was more than fashion. It was a visual declaration. I carry this institution forward. And now, decades later, Kate had picked up that torch, with precision. Let's be clear, she didn't have to. The palace has an entire archive of headpieces. More accessible, more modern, more neutral. But Kate didn't choose one of those. She resurrected a queen's tiara and wore it at the exact moment Meghan was attempting to rebuild her Hollywood brand. Coincidence? Meghan didn't think so. Why? Because back in 2018, she had asked to wear a specific tiara for her wedding, a Russian emerald tiara, dripping in scandalous history. But her request was denied. Queen Elizabeth, reportedly concerned about optics and origin, insisted she wear the more conservative Queen Mary bandeau instead. Meghan was livid. Reports later leaked of a tiara tantrum, in which Meghan allegedly told staff, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." Even if that quote was exaggerated, the frustration wasn't. She saw herself as a new kind of royal, and she wanted a headpiece that reflected that bold new vision. She didn't get it. Now, 7 years later, she watches as Kate, the very embodiment of institutional obedience, is gifted the chance to wear a far more powerful, historically charged tiara than Meghan was ever even allowed to try on. Imagine the emotional whiplash. Imagine spending years believing you were excluded from royal heritage, only to see your biggest rival welcomed into it without resistance. Because this fringe tiara wasn't just royal. It was a milestone marker. Every time it had surfaced in history, it was tied to a woman stepping into uncontested power. Not the kind of power Meghan built through press appearances, podcast contracts, or behind-the-scenes brand deals. No, this was bloodline power, throne proximity power, destiny power. And when Kate wore it, that message screamed through every glittering spike. But here's the layer no one talked about in the headlines. The fringe tiara's reappearance came at a time when the crown's future is fragile. King Charles's health, though not officially concerning, had noticeably shifted. He was appearing less frequently. Camilla had reduced her overseas travel. Prince William was stepping in more and more. The palace had been reshuffling. Carefully, silently, but noticeably. And then came Kate. No speeches. No statements. Just a tiara. A tiara that had not been seen since the days of full-throttle monarchy. A tiara last associated with coronations, queen mothers, and dynastic assurances. A tiara designed to say one thing. The line is secure. The crown is ready. And Meghan, who had spent years arguing that the system was flawed, cold, and antiquated, suddenly found herself watching the system reassert itself with stunning clarity. Through a tiara. It must have felt like a slap in the face. Because here's what's almost painful in its irony. Meghan walked away from the royal family because she believed she'd never be truly accepted, truly empowered, truly seen. And yet now, Kate, by embracing the very traditions Meghan had rejected, was being elevated, respected, even adored on a global scale. And the image that represented all of that wasn't a magazine cover, wasn't an interview, wasn't a podcast or a viral soundbite. It was a woman standing silently in a banquet hall, wearing a piece of metal forged generations ago, surrounded by diplomats and dignitaries who now looked at her as the face of monarchy, a face that wasn't Meghan's, and never would be. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to redefine yourself, only to watch someone else redefine you with one move? That's what Meghan was up against. She had painted the institution as outdated, restrictive, out of step with the modern world. But now, Kate was proving that tradition could be modern, if worn the right way. And Meghan had no answer for that. Because authenticity always wins in the long run. And Kate wasn't playing at being royal. She was royal. She had waited. She had worked. She had endured. And now she was rising. So when Kate chose that particular tiara, one last worn in eras of wartime queens and unshakable matriarchs, She wasn't just shining. She was signaling. And Meghan? She saw it. She felt it. She understood it. But here's the final twist. According to one insider, Meghan didn't just see the tiara as a personal insult. She saw it as a warning. She believed the palace was preparing to make a formal transition of power, the source claimed. Not just to William, but symbolically to Kate. And the tiara? That was the opening shot. If that's true, then Meghan's fear wasn't just about being eclipsed. It was about being erased. Because when history books are written, they don't care about podcast deals. They care about symbolism, about lineage, about the woman who wore the crown, not the one who walked away from it. And on that night, in that tiara, Kate didn't just rewrite the narrative. She began the chapter that ends Meghan's. But what Meghan did next was something even Kate never anticipated. It wasn't silent. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't elegant. It was calculated, emotional, and public. Because if Kate was playing chess, Meghan was ready to flip the board. 3 tiaras, 1 year, and each one more devastating to Meghan than the last. By the time Kate Middleton appeared at the German state banquet in the Hanoverian Fringe, it was already clear something had shifted inside the palace. This wasn't just tradition on parade. This was choreography, deliberate, strategic. And for Meghan Markle, watching from across the Atlantic, it felt like a full-blown campaign. Because the tiara Kate wore in Germany wasn't her first of the year. It was her third. Let that sink in. 3 tiara appearances in a single calendar year. For a royal who had once gone years without a single one. Why? Why the sudden change in frequency? Why the intensifying grandeur? Why the build-up? First subtle, then obvious, and now undeniable. To understand the emotional damage it inflicted on Meghan, and why her team allegedly went into full-blown crisis mode after the German banquet, we have to understand what the previous 2 tiara moments were, and why Meghan saw them not as fashion, but as a pattern of power. Let's rewind to March 2025. The first tiara appearance came unexpectedly during a state reception for the President of Kenya. Kate arrived wearing the lotus flower tiara, understated, delicate, but laced with legacy. It was the same one she'd worn to her very first tiara event back in 2013. But this time, it looked different. It wasn't the piece that changed, it was her. She wore it like a woman who knew the cameras weren't just watching her, they were studying her. It was elegant, controlled, familiar, a soft reintroduction of Kate not as accessory to William, but as a symbol of continuity. She was no longer playing the supporting role. She was the visual anchor of the event. No one thought much of it. At first, it felt like a classic royal gesture. Polished, reassuring. But Meghan noticed. According to one source close to her media team, Meghan flagged the Kenya event immediately. She said it felt deliberate. Not just the tiara, the whole rollout. The press, the timing, the tone. She wasn't wrong. Because 3 months later, Kate appeared again. This time at the state opening of Parliament, wearing the Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara, the same one once favored by Princess Diana. But this time, she paired it with an icy, pale blue ensemble and carried herself with such calm certainty that even veteran royal watchers began whispering. This isn't just tradition, one former royal aide told a UK tabloid. This is coronation prep. Meghan was reportedly furious, not just because Kate looked stunning, but because the press coverage was so unshakably positive. Headlines read, Kate channels Diana in dazzling display of duty. Future Queen? Kate makes history in Parliament. Grace under pressure. Kate sets a new standard for royal symbolism. Meanwhile, Meghan was struggling to gain traction with a new charitable initiative in Montecito, one that had quietly failed to secure a major corporate sponsor. The timing wasn't just inconvenient. It was humiliating. And now, with the German banquet as the third tiara event, the message felt coordinated. Kate hadn't just stumbled into her role as future queen. She was being positioned, with increasing clarity, as the face of the monarchy. And each tiara was a new step up the ladder. Each appearance more commanding. Each piece older, rarer, more symbolic. From the lotus flower, youthful, soft power, to the lover's knot, heritage, Diana's memory, to the Hanoverian Fringe, queen-level dominance. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a coronation in slow motion. And Meghan? She wasn't part of the picture at all. Here's the part that truly burned. Meghan had spent the last 2 years trying to reframe her narrative. She had spoken of her pain, of breaking generational trauma, of becoming her own woman outside the monarchy. And yet, the more she talked, the more Kate wore. The contrast was punishing. Meghan. Wordy interviews, scattered media strategy, fluctuating public support. Kate. 3 appearances, 0 interviews, worldwide adoration. It was the most brutal kind of public comparison, not loud, not obvious, but quietly suffocating. Because while Meghan spent her time building content, Kate built mythology, and the press noticed. Fashion magazines began referring to Kate's Tiara era. Royal watchers began analyzing each appearance like a chess move. Social media started elevating Kate from fashion icon to queen-in-waiting, with hashtags like #Tiara Trilogy, #Kate Ascends, #3 for the Throne. And Meghan? She was being left behind in real time. Ask yourself, how does a woman like Meghan, sharp, media-savvy, and deeply image-conscious, react to being outmaneuvered in silence? One source close to her team described the mood as tense and erratic. They didn't expect a third tiara moment, the insider revealed. They thought the first 2 were ceremonial. But this one, the German Banquet, that felt like a shot across the bow. And Meghan took it personally, especially because she remembered her own tiara moment and how it had become a tabloid punchline. Her wedding tiara, the Queen Mary bandeau, had been beautiful, but simple. She'd wanted something bolder. She'd been denied. The press mocked her. The palace, according to reports, stonewalled her. And now Kate? Kate had received access to the rarest piece in decades, without pushback, without scandal, without the media frenzy. Just applause, respect, silence. And that silence, that elegance, was the one thing Meghan couldn't compete with. Because here's the cruel truth. In a world where everything is content, silence is power. And Kate's 3 tiara moments were pure, wordless dominance. No statements, no leaks, no drama, just history, worn like armor. It was a style of warfare Meghan had no shield against, because every time she opened her mouth, the press dissected her. Every time Kate didn't, the public worshipped her. And with the third tiara appearance, the unspoken conclusion became visible even to Meghan's most loyal defenders. The crown wasn't just moving forward. It was moving without her. But Meghan wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. If Kate's strategy was subtle symbolism, Meghan's next move would be explosive visibility. Because the very next day, less than 24 hours after Kate stunned the world in fringe and diamonds, Meghan's team placed a mysterious call to Vanity Fair. An offer, an exclusive, a royal comeback like no other. And what that offer contained would send shockwaves across both Hollywood and Windsor. She built it like a fortress. The interviews, the Netflix docuseries, the Spotify deals, the Archwell Foundation, the curated Instagram aesthetic. The designer staged paparazzi walks in Montecito. It wasn't just a brand, it was a barrier. A carefully constructed shield meant to protect Meghan Markle from irrelevance, from criticism, from comparison. Most importantly, it was designed to insulate her from Kate Middleton. Because Meghan's Hollywood model wasn't just about being visible, it was about being unreachable. Not just a duchess, not just a woman who'd married a prince, but something new, something bigger. A global, post-royal powerhouse. But on one night, with one tiara, in one glittering moment under the chandeliers of a German state banquet, Kate shattered it all, and Meghan could feel the walls caving in. Her brand, that delicate hybrid of royal prestige and Hollywood flair, wasn't supposed to be vulnerable to symbolism. It wasn't supposed to be obliterated by a photo, but it was. Because Meghan's power had always been about narrative control. She spoke. She revealed. She crafted context. But Kate didn't need to say a word. The fringe tiara said it all. And what it said, with brutal clarity, was this. This is who history will remember. Let's talk about the collapse, not of Meghan's career, but of her model. Meghan's entire post-royal strategy revolved around celebrity mechanics. It was rooted in access, emotion, relatability, and progressive values. She became the spokesperson for mental health, for feminism, for cultural equity. She gave voice to the voiceless. She turned pain into a podcast. But beneath all of it was an essential truth. Her fame was still borrowed. Borrowed from the monarchy, Borrowed from the title. Borrowed from the fairy tale. She needed to be the Duchess of Sussex to get the Netflix meeting. She needed to be Harry's wife to land the cover of Time. She needed to be the rebel royal to sell the docuseries. And yet she tried to frame it as independence. But true independence would have meant she could stand without the shadow of Windsor. And Kate proved, in silence, that she could. That's what broke the spell. The public didn't just admire Kate at the banquet. They chose her. For years, Meghan's defenders argued that she had a modern, dynamic edge, that she was more relatable, more vulnerable, more forward-thinking, that she connected with the real world, while Kate represented a dying institution. But suddenly, in one tiara-clad moment, that flipped. Kate was the future, and Meghan was playing catch-up. Let's look at the aftermath. Within hours of the state banquet, Meghan's name was trending, but not as the subject. As the contrast, Kate in royal regalia, Meghan in recycled talking points, Kate glowing under crystal chandeliers, Meghan retreating behind polished Instagram captions, Kate becoming the woman she was always told she would become, and Meghan realizing she wasn't becoming anything new at all. One image consultant, speaking anonymously to Vanity Fair, described it this way. Meghan's brand was built on the presumption that she could outshine the royal family. She thought her story, her pain, her charisma, her courage would create an entirely new kind of influence. But what she didn't understand is that institutions don't compete. They absorb. And Kate didn't compete. She absorbed everything Meghan rejected, the silence, the structure, the symbolism, and transformed it into power. That's the piece that shattered Meghan's strategy. Her fame had always needed justification, but Kate's needed none. Meghan had to keep explaining herself. Kate never did. That's why Hollywood, always chasing the next icon, began to shift. Producers who once fawned over Meghan's potential began whispering about her unpredictability. Executives who once viewed her as a bold voice now questioned her relevance. Stylists and fashion houses that once battled to dress her began prioritizing quiet royalty over noisy celebrity. And the irony? The very industry Meghan thought she could dominate was now disengaging. Because celebrity is a volatile currency. It demands momentum. And Kate's momentum, silent, regal, unstoppable, had stolen the stage.